So I'm gonna make a whole video just about my life with seizures and what it's like for me personally and kind of my history with seizures and what it's like, the best I can explain it. The first thing I have to say is a seizure is something that you can really only understand unless you have one. Like many other things. But I will go through how this all started with me because I was not born with epilepsy and having seizures when I was like 3 months old. So this just happened for me and it's just the way it is. I first started having seizures when I was 16. But the interesting thing is that me, my mom, and my Lyme doctor, the same doctor I have now for Lyme disease. You know, I have a bunch of doctors, but my Lyme doctor, we did not know that they were seizures for definitely months, maybe a year. It was a long time because it was very atypical at the time. Now we look back and we're like, oh, and I can like name exactly what it was and it makes perfect sense. At the time, it didn't make any sense. That's just how things seem to work out. But when people think of seizures, they think of someone going unconscious, like getting, like spitting up in their mouth and having it get all bubbly and foaming at their mouth and having their whole body like really jerking and moving and it only lasts for a couple minutes. That's a tonic-clonic seizure, also known as a grand mal seizure. That's basically like the label people put on seizures, but there are so many types of seizures that I had no idea of, and all those seizures themselves can show themselves and manifest in different ways in different people, so it makes it a lot harder to diagnose a seizure than you think in the beginning. You really have to put a lot of thought and thinking into it. So when I was 16, I was doing treatment with my Lyme doctor, and let me try my best to reenact this. Again, you really can't reenact it. I have videos on my YouTube channel, so you can go and see videos of my seizures. And I think I might have more, so maybe I'll post some more and make like another collaboration of seizure videos. But it started off with me just kind of going like, and I would collapse at one side, to one side. And usually it was to the left side, but not always. And it was just like this electrical current just came to me and like shocked me, and I couldn't control it, and I would just collapse and then I would come back. And just like right then, as I'm faking and pretending to show you somewhat of an example, the best that I can, I am talking and conscious and aware. That's how I would be. I think I stopped talking while I flinched for a second, but it would be that short. And then my legs would start to do it, and that got pretty scary. Seizures themselves really aren't that scary. It's usually the things that like come along with them that are more scary. But now I need to like fix myself in the camera angle again, because I'd be sitting like at the doctor's office, you know, on like the examination table, which, you know, it's like kind of high up. It's not like sitting in a chair, and my whole body would flail at once, and I would fall off of the table. And they would have to catch me, and they'd put me in certain rooms, or I would have to sit in like the chair that's meant for someone else, not the patient, or I would sit on the floor. And we just thought, like, she just has these jerky movements. And again, I would be perfectly fine. I would just have these jerky movements, and my arm would go, or my legs would go, or my whole body would go at once, and that's when my whole body, like, would go to the floor, and I couldn't control it. That was the first sign that I had a seizure disorder, but there are also movement disorders, which can be very similar to seizure disorders. And it was just difficult. There was so much going on with me that we didn't know that that was a seizure. I would be walking down the hall. They would try to get me some exercise to help my stomach with digestion. And I would just walk down the hall, up and down the hall of the doctor's office. And then I would just break at my waist and come back. And it's like for a second, like things like went away. But my eyes would stay open, or they would close for a second. And I would still continue a conversation. That's definitely the beginning. As time went on, the type of seizure, we thought it was myoclonus, which is a movement disorder. And there are also myoclonic seizures. It's really complicated, but they stayed that way, the movements and the seizures that I had, for a while. But they would get worse in intensity. Like, instead of just, sometimes it would be an arm. That simple. Like, no big deal. Or then it would be, I need to move this all the way back at the end of my bed. And I would be sitting here, and my legs would fly up, and I would fall forward. So if you're sitting on a chair, you hit your head on a table. Or if you're like me, you're holding a cup of tea, and your hand goes up, and you hit yourself in the forehead with a cup of tea. That has happened. Or you knee yourself in the face. Happened. I've kicked my mom. My mom's been behind me, and I've kicked her with my foot in her forehead, into her forehead. So the jerky movements have gotten worse over time. I'm not sure when I started developing the other types of seizures. And that's when my primary care doctor was like, I think she has a seizure disorder, which is the same thing as epilepsy. Seizure disorder and epilepsy are the same thing. There are different types of epilepsy, but you can use either term interchangeably, and it just means that the person has seizures. And what happened was I started getting these episodes where I would like blank out and stare, and then I have tons of footage of this on my YouTube channel, so you can definitely see this in action. Me moving my mouth and like chewing, but it's not like I'm eating something. There's nothing in my mouth. And I would be like dazed, and my mom would ask me questions, and I would be like in another world, and then I don't really remember it. And then my mom would videotape me to show my doctors, and that's why I have footage of all this. It's not just let's videotape me having a seizure, it's let's show them so they can see what we're talking about. And I guess there's just this glazed look that now my mom knows well, but she didn't know at the time, that I get, and I can't reproduce that look, but there are there is footage of that when I just have this like look of total glazed confusion, and then I start making these mouth sounds or going like this, making movements with my face. So that's when my primary care doctor thought, when he saw that video that my mom showed him at my appointment, that these episodes looked like a type of seizure. Now, of course, we brought all this stuff up to my neurologist, who is Lyme literate, and Lyme literate means he is trained by ILADS, International Lyme and Associated Disease Society. He was like, yeah, those are seizures. He's like, I don't need an EEG, you know, where you put all the things on your head. I have had one, and it didn't come back with any results because I wasn't having a seizure during it. You have to have a seizure during the EEG for it to show results. And he was like, just looking at the footage, he's like, yeah, she has seizure disorder. She has epilepsy. Like, it was obvious to him, so we're like, okay. And that's when I started taking seizure medication, and we started like looking into what was, of course, going to be best for me.